Okay, so we are building out our post request, and here we have a form. It's already set up with an action of /process and a method of post, and it's going to be passing in this input that is named x2. Right? So what is the first thing we're going to build? Here. Need a route, right? Okay, so I'm going to add a route, and what route is this supposed to be? Yes, so this route is going to be processed because it should match the same as this one. Okay, and then what's the next thing I'm going to do? Define. Okay, and then what do we want to call it? Process, right? So we're going to call it something that's logical, that makes sense, that's based on probably the same name as the route. Okay, and then what else do we want to do?
Include the method in there.
Yes, we need to include the method in the route, right? So we need to specify that this is for post. And again, we have methods rather than method, whereas here we have method singular, post. Here we have methods plural with the array post. Okay. All right, what's next?
Return redirect.
Return redirect. Okay. And where do we want to redirect back to? We'll just go back to the route. Okay. And then we also need to import redirect so that it is available. And then here, if we wanted to grab, let's say, form x value, let's say that, okay? So this, how do we grab this?
Request.form.
Request.form. And then input, which is x2. All right, so this makes sense, right? Because this is, you have a request that is coming in from, that is making this process request, right? It's a new request, right? That's this button that's being submitted, right? And then part of that request in the content section, right, is the form. And then we have that piece of data, which is x2. And so we have a value for that, and then we have a form x value, right? So I could print that as well. So let's say I print form x value, okay? And then I go to my server and refresh the page, and something crashed. Invalid syntax.
You put a bracket for the parentheses.
You don't import the request, no?
Bracket for the parentheses? Where?
Should that be parentheses instead of bracket? Request form. Oh.
No, I think this is supposed to be bracket. What am I here to say? App.run debug equals true. Invalid syntax. Maybe it was because it crashed in the middle?
Because of
Yeah.
Well, I think it crashed in the middle while I was typing it. Yeah, okay, all right. So, refresh the page. No crash this time. Okay, I submit this. And a global name request is not defined. Request.
It's in the form x value. You didn't open the x2.
Import request.
The bracket.
You have to import request.
Oh,
I have to import request?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have to import request.
Oh, the post method post.
Yeah.
You didn't open it.
That's supposed to
You
know.
see it says app root process methods equal, and then post.
Methods equal. Post is open. Yeah, okay. I think it's not importing request. I think that's a problem. Okay, so let's try that again. First page. Okay, there. All right. So now if I look in here in my terminal, I printed this. Okay. All right. So that's how that part works. So now the question is, how do I keep track of this information? Right? Like I just saved it to, like I printed this, right? What if I wanted to set x to this? Okay, like if I were to say, I don't know, x1 equals form of x value, right? Is this going to make this part say hi, blah blah blah, ASDF, whatever it is? No. Okay, why is it not going to do that?
It's never really like passed it back to your.
We never saved it anywhere.
You never saved it anywhere, and this x1, how long does it exist for?
Only in that scope.
It only exists in the scope, right? So we have this method process, and so the x1 is only going to exist within the scope of this method. Okay, so the moment we do the return, x1's gone, right? So we can't save it this way, right? We can try it, but nothing's going to happen, right? So if I were to say 8, and submit it, it'll print 8, but this is still going to say high 5, right? Okay. So how can we get this to stick around so that it exists up here? Global variable. Okay. So let's try global variable first. Okay. So you can make a global variable. Okay. Let's say the problem. Part of the problem here is that every time you go to hello world, even if it was changing the value, right? If the moment I go back and run this method again with the subsequent request, x1 is getting set back to 5, right? So I think the first thing we need to do is probably get rid of this. We're going to move it out, okay? And then so let's try this, okay? I don't think okay, this is also not going to work, but we'll try it. I do that, which is 8, okay? So if I were to, for instance, print x here. Okay, then when I refresh the page, global name x1. Okay, when I refresh the page, it will say 5. I can hit 8. I submit it. It's going to say 8 and then 5, right? Because the first time I loaded the page, it was 5. I went to the process method. We printed the value, which was 8. And then we redirected back to the hello world and went back to 5. Right? So it doesn't stick. All right, so how do we make this stick? Okay, so one way would be to make it a global variable. Okay, so if I were to do global x1 here, okay, then this is going to access this global x1, and I'm going to be able to access it here. I'm going to be able to change the value, and then the new x1 will be different. Okay, because this x1 is actually just run the first time the server boots, okay, and it loads. Okay, it is assigned this value of 5, and then I'm just modifying it here. Okay, so that way, this way I'm referencing the same variable. So if I were to refresh this, and I picked 8 here, I hit submit, that says high 8. Okay, so this is one way you can kind of change it. Okay, now if I were to open this, okay, so let's say this was live. Okay. Someone changed it to 8. Okay, let's say I visited the page, I changed it to 8. Let's say 5 minutes later, Lucas goes to the page for the first time. Is it going to say 8 or 5? It's going to say 8. Yeah. This variable is like stored on the server, right? And it's just whatever variable the server is holding on to. And so everyone's data is going to change. Okay, so you can test that here locally by, let's say if I were to open Firefox, right, and I went to localhost. Also says 8. I change this to 9 here. Okay. I go back to this page. I refresh it. It now says 9. Okay. Your two browsers can be thought of as like sort of two different computers that are basically interacting with the same server, right? We have 3 different components here. We have the Firefox browser, the Chrome browser, and also this other server that's running Python. Okay. And they're all communicating with each other locally within my same machine. Okay. All right. So unless you, huh? Yeah, that's because Django, I believe Django should have a global variable. It probably should have the same scenario too. Yeah. So yeah. So this is a way to change it, but you're only just changing on the server. Okay. So what is another way we can store this data and change it? Session. Yeah. Okay. And the third way is using databases, which we'll cover later. Okay. So now we can use sessions. Okay, so first I'm going to show you how to do it with sessions. Okay, and then I'll explain what the actual difference is. Okay, so here, if I were to say, I'm going to get rid of this. Okay, I'm going to say session x1 equals 5. Okay, and then here we can pass in session of x1. Okay, what data type is the session? Dictionary. Yeah, at least it's represented by a dictionary. Okay, and so that's why we have this keyword session, square bracket, key. Okay, and then 5 is the value. Right, so I'm setting a session, value to 5, and I'm setting it back. I'm passing it back in as x2 to the index.html. Okay. So if I were to do this, and then let's change this part too. Let's say now it's session x1 equals form x value. Okay. And then let's refresh the page. Okay. Global name session is not defined. All right, what do I need to do? Yeah, import it. Yeah, gotta import session. Okay, let's try again. Session is unavailable because no secret key was set. App.secret key. Okay. So, huh? Yeah. So, yeah, you can call it whatever you want. Probably don't. Okay, what is the syntax for this? Is it like that?
No, it's
Okay. All right.
So you just leave it empty, just that?
You can call it whatever you want, but I mean, you guys aren't really going to be deploying any Flask applications, so you shouldn't have any security problems with it, because by the time you guys do deployment, you'll be doing it in Django. But if it wasn't, then you would want something.
So you want something to call it something?
Something secure, yeah, not just this is secret and everyone has this is secret, not very much of a secret, right? So, okay, but for now, just running it, we can use this. Okay, all right, so refresh the page. All right, so I'm gonna put 8 now. Hit submit, and nothing changes. Why is nothing changing? I'm defining again here, right? So it's getting overwritten.
Storing it somewhere.
It is storing it. Okay, so if I were to print session of x1, and then I were to print session of x1 here, right? Oops. Okay. If I reload the page, it'll say 5. I type, let's say 9. It'll say 9 and then 5. Okay, that says 9 twice. I'm not sure why it says 9 twice. I'm printing. Oh, print form and form x value. Yeah, that's right. Okay. All right. So it is storing it into the session. Okay, but it is just getting overwritten. All right. So how do we want to work with this?
Try accept.
Huh?
Use try and accept.
Okay. So try accept is one way to do it. Try accept means that you are basically that looks like this. Okay. So if you have a try, that means that whatever code is inside the try, if it'll potentially throw an error, okay? And then accept stands for like handling an exception, okay? Like which is basically the error. So then if there's an error, then it will run the accept clause. Okay? So this is the way we're handling errors. But the better way to do it is to not generate the error actually. Okay? So there is another way to do this, which is very important that you guys know, which is to do session.get. And you pass the key. Okay? This will not throw an error. Okay? So the reason is when you do session of x1, okay, you're basically saying, I have my dictionary, right? My session dictionary, and it has this key x1, and it has this value. Okay? You're going to go here and grab this one. But it doesn't handle the fact that x1 doesn't exist, right? If I try to do session of x2 and there's no x2, it'll be like, what the crap is that? I can't assign it, and like, I can't do session of x2 equals value, okay? And I'm gonna give up and throw an error, okay? So you can only call session square bracket of something if that key, or at least you can only try to assign session something like that if there is a value, okay? Because if you do session of x1 and there's no session of x2, there's no x2, you'll get like null or something, okay? So I can try that. So for instance, if I were to print session of x2 here, refresh the page, then okay, you'll actually don't even get a cure. So you can't even try to print that, okay? So it has to exist, okay, in order for you to use this specific syntax. This, on the other hand, .get, this is like an abstraction, okay? So someone else has written a method for you already to basically grab the value, and then if here, This will, let's print this. Okay. Okay. This is going to print. Didn't print it. Hold on. Why is it probably still print 5? Oh, because it's already 5. That's why.
Let's do it. Just,
All right. I'm gonna session. I'm gonna get rid of this session first. Or you can do this too. Session dot clear.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So if I clear it, then I believe refreshing will do nothing.
try product browsing. So reset the cache.
Alright, get x1. Hold on. Here it is. Oh, it's because this thing's throwing an error. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of this for a second. Alright. Okay, press the page. Alright, there we go. Okay, so now it'll say none. Okay, so if you try to use a .get on a session for a key that doesn't exist, it'll just return none rather than throwing you an error. Okay, whereas if you write print session of x1, you will actually get an error. Okay, so that's the difference. And that's because there's this abstraction layer where it basically checks for you whether that key exists or not. Okay, so we can use this. How can we use this so that we can change what the session value is on a subsequent post? If what? If else? Okay, yes. Okay, so if session.get of x1 equals what? So okay, so what is it by default if you haven't set anything yet? None, right? So it is none. So you check whether it's none. If it's none, you can set it to something. Okay, so session of x1 equals 5. Okay.
This is for initializing.
Initializing. So this is how you would initialize a session value, right? Because you can't. Normally, you would probably want to write if session of x1 equals 5, or equals none, right? But the problem with this is that this will throw you an error because the moment it hits this, it gives up. Okay, so we write it this way instead, and then you can assign a value to it. All right, so now if we do this, refresh the page, figure out what I did wrong. Okay. Now if I were to put a new number in, the number should change, but I'm not displaying it. I need to display it. Okay, session. Oh, this is all right. So let's try that again. Okay, so it already got changed. Okay, so 4. Okay. Now this one, if I were to go to Chrome or Firefox, right, refresh the page, it still says 5. Right, so we got a difference here. It's actually different. Okay, so this is how it's different from the global variable. Okay, so this is how you use sessions. Okay, and this is how you would make changes to sessions. Now let's actually cover how. All right. So let's say that I am the router. I'm the server. Okay, I'm the server. Okay. Okay. All right. So you made a request to me. Okay. You made this GET request first, right? Okay. Came with the page. Okay. And then I sent you back the page, and then you click the submit button. Okay. Came back to me. All right. And then now I want to store the information you sent me. Okay. So Snorlax is our session data. Okay. This is your session. This box. Okay. This box is the session. So what I'm going to do is when you give me your data, right, I basically take Snorlax and put it inside. Okay. And then I send you back a response. I'm going to, I'll send a redirect, right? But then I'll also give you back your session data, basically. Okay. So I give you Snorlax. Okay, so this is what's happening with your session data. Okay, I'm creating it. I make this Snorlax. Okay, I store it in the session data, and then I give it back to the browser. Okay, so now he has it. I never hold on to it actually. The moment I finish making it, I pass it on. Okay, then he browses the page some more, reads some more stuff, whatever, right? And then let's say now he is back at the index page. Okay, and he wants to change the value. Okay, so you will actually let's say the value was 5, now it wants to change back to 9, right? You actually pass me back the session. Okay, all right. The browser reads the data, so like you took Snorlax out and you said, okay, this is my value of 5 or something, right? Like in his HTML file. Okay, so all right, so I just made the session, right? You took it out. You read it, okay? You use it for displaying information, so like in your HTML file possibly, as well as just to check what it is, okay? And then you send it back to me, right? I hold on to, I then take it. The server is the only one who can modify Snorlax, okay? I'm the only one who can change the value of the data, okay? So I get this session back because he made a new request, okay? And then I modify Snorlax. Snorlax has been modified, okay? I put the data back inside, okay, new value, okay? And then I send it back, okay? So I never hold on to the data, okay? The way that this is helpful is because if, I don't have another Snorlax in another batch, but if Lucas was also another browser, right, and he joined, right, then he can keep track of the data for me. I don't need to keep track of the data of hundreds of people that are using my website. I just need to modify it on the spot, whatever I get, and give back to him, okay? They can just read it, right? Because the session is tamper-proof, he doesn't have the key to modify. Okay, so
So basically, I'm requesting you to modify it.
yes, you request me to modify it, but you can request for me to modify it through your request.form
Like when I change.
when you change something on the form, you hit the submit button, right? But that's because I built that logic in, right? I could change Snorlax without you requesting it, right? Because I control the session data. As long as you pass me that information, I'm free to change it however I like. It's just that in this example, you're typing in the 7, which is kind of like a separate process, right? That's just like I got that information from the request, and the session is just also passed back to me, and then I decide to modify it. Using that, I get back to you. You can use it to display. Okay? All right. Any questions with this?
So the browser can read, server can only the server can read.
Only the server can modify it. The browser can read it.
And it's like refreshing it. It's going to redisplay what the server has modified.
So
on your
yeah, because
request.
if you refresh the page, right? So let's say you did you submitted the 7, right? You passed it back to me, okay? And then I did the modification to 7. I passed it back to you. If you do a refresh, right? Then you're still going to. I'm not changing anything, right? You're just making a GET request actually. The session is probably not even sent back to me. I don't think, because it doesn't really need to be, okay? But the point is that doesn't change, right? You still have the session data available, and so you can still use that to display what you want to display. Okay?
How could Lucas get a session?
How can so Lucas makes a request to me, okay? And then
You don't have.
I don't. Okay, well, I make it.
Yeah.
I make it. I'm the server, so I make it, right? So if Lucas makes a new request, he visits the web page for the first time, okay? And then he submits some information. I know that I need to give him a session, okay? So then this is just some data, right? So I make it, okay? I make a Snorlax, and I put it in the session box, okay? And then I toss it back to Lucas.
Is this the same pack?
It's like a different one. So I have like a separate, it's like a green one or something like that. It's like a different session, right? The session container, each browser has their own.
Okay.
Okay, so like that's just their session with me. Okay, if they go to another website, let's say you're another server, then they would have another set. Okay. All right. Any questions?
So it's like once they visit a website, the server will create a session for okay.
Once he visits the website, if he needs a session, the server will create a session for him. Yeah.
So when we do something in our code and we go back and refresh the page, for instance, in our form, and we don't do a hard reset on the browser, is that because the session is being saved somewhere in the browser?
It's being saved somewhere in the browser. It's still there. Yeah. So,
Like they're the cookies, right?
yeah, they're like cookies. Yeah. Like you can go if you do like clear cache for the cookies, you'll delete it on your browser. But if you don't do that, then it'll just stay there. Yeah. Sometimes these sessions and cookies they have like a set expiration date, so after some period of time they'll just disappear. But if, in general, if you don't clear it, then you just hold on to it.
Is there a way to clear it through the server? Just to save?
Clear to the server? Yeah, I can do session.clear. Right? That's saying that like kind of like next time they make that request, I'm clearing it out. I'm taking the Snorlax out of the bag and passing the bag down. Other questions? Yeah. All right. Thanks, Jesse. Stop the screen recording.